All right, let me click one thing. Hello, well women. I am so happy to be here to talk to you about happy hormones and food freedom because I know that is what you want. And I think we all also know the truth is there is not one path to food freedom. There is not one path to happy hormones, and that's okay. And that's why I know you're going to appreciate so much that we have Coach Kim here today with us. And she is going to share her journey to food freedom and happy hormones. And so you can listen in and hear what really rings true with you and get some pieces for your puzzle, because even though there is not one right answer, you can. And that's why Coach Jules and I are here and Coach Kim is here, because we're doing this right alongside you and we know you can too. So before we go any further, let me say thank you to Coach Jules for bringing Coach Kim to us, and let me also give my great big appreciation from all of us to you, Kim, for making time to be here and share with us. It is a huge benefit to this community of women who, when they come here, they answer questions to join the group. And I ask about happy hormones, food freedom. This is what we all, really want to hear about. So Kim has agreed to introduce herself and share her journey with us. And then we'll see how it goes with time. If you all have questions, feel free to ask those. And then we'll go from there and see if maybe you have any, questions for Coach Jules or I as well. You could ask those at the end. Does that sound good? All right, I'm going to turn it over to Coach Kim. I'm going to mute myself.
All right. Thank you all for having me here. I truly appreciate it and grateful for you to listen to my story. And I hope that you can end up having some takeaways from it, because I know that my story, when I tell it to other women, they can relate a lot to it, because I come from a background of lots of yo-yo dieting. I come from a background of very much perfection, that all or nothing thinking that we've been talking about and we've been hearing a lot about now. For myself, I went through as far as the hormone side, it was probably like a 5 to 7 year journey for myself. I ended up going through fertility treatments to have my children because of my husband. So it was a little bit different, but like most women, I was on birth control for most of my life. And then like the high doses of hormones through IVF and all these other things, ended up having 2 children. In between the 2 children, I never ended up getting my period back. Doctor was just like, oh, it's fine. I stopped breastfeeding like soon after. I never got my period. And then after my daughter and I stopped breastfeeding, I'm like, okay, like, I think I'm supposed to start to see something happening now, and nothing was happening. So like, not to shorten this, but I ended up realizing like I was way over exercising. I was not eating enough. I was very much focused on eating clean, so to speak, where I was restrictive of lots of other foods. The amount of stress that was in my life, having a infant and a 2-year-old and my husband working second shift and basically working full time and then being on call and having to manage it all and be like a single mom basically at night. So I had so many different factors going into this, the over exercising, under eating, but not realizing that I was doing it. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. After you have a baby, you lose all the body weight, and just the amount, like I was, pumping all the time at work, just so much stress that was put on top of me during that time. So I started to look into things to see what was going on. I had symptoms like anything from just like really bad digestion, obviously fatigue because the kids were waking up throughout the night, loss of a period. I did have some like hair loss. I did notice that when I was like I didn't have much of an appetite, which was surprising because I was under eating, but it was just because my hormones and my leptin and ghrelin levels were completely off too. And just very much obsessed with, I would say, the scale all the time, like a severe fear of gaining weight. Again, I was feeling like very stressed about food and food choices and not being the right choice certain times and things like that. I was doing, at the time I was kind of fasting because my body, like, I was so used to during morning sickness time, like I wasn't able to eat a ton. So I kind of got my body adapted to that, which wasn't the best at the time for me in a situation where I didn't have a cycle. It's considered something called like RED-S, which is relative energy deficiency in sport. So even though I wouldn't consider myself an athlete, I did cardio, I did weights, I was working out probably 6 to 7 days a week because that was my time my me time as as a mom to really focus in on taking care of myself. So I was putting so much effort into that. And then basically it was because I was under eating. I saw doctors and they pretty much were just like, here, go take some more birth controls and we'll get you a cycle back. Unfortunately, like I was just like, that doesn't feel right to me. I went to see multiple doctors, endocrinologists, checking thyroid, every different panel they could possibly do. Basically, my hormone levels were like of a woman of menopause because estrogen was down, FSH was down, LHs were down. There was just nothing going on at all. And again, like I just wasn't feeling right, not sleeping right, all of that. And I think so about 2 years after, like maybe a year and a half after I had my daughter, I'm like, okay, I should have a cycle. Just started to make some small changes with lifestyle, trying to decrease the amount I was working out, reduce some of the cardio. And then I started to be like, all right, I'm going to start to try to gain weight on purpose because I was extremely lean. I'm 5'1", but I got down to a really low body weight for myself. And it was just not something probably should have been sustainable for myself. And I ended up just like trying to gain a little extra weight and nothing was really happening. Still like got blood tests, nothing's happening. When I see other doctors and they're like, oh, you just need to like go for a run and you just need to like exercise harder because you're really stressed out dealing with all this, which I knew was like, I was just like, red flag, this is not the right thing for me. I need to leave right now. And so I was also probably shamed by a lot of doctors too, where I was just like, I want to focus on restoring stuff by myself without going on birth control, where I was just kind of like thrown in like, it's your decision and you're going to ruin your body and all of these things. So I just had to let that go. I kind of have to put my own physical like physique on the back burner and realize that right then it was like the big driving force for my children and my husband. And I wanted to just focus on my overall hormonal health, my own health, all of the things. I did end up going for a DEXA scan and had like signs of like osteopenia, which is bone loss and stuff like that because of the long-term breastfeeding with both children and because I wasn't cycling at the time. So I was just like, I need to make it changes. And I did an approach, which is like, I wouldn't typically recommend anymore, but it was more of like an all-in approach where I was just planning on eating as much as possible. I wasn't looking at macros, even though I had originally had a macro coach, but unfortunately it was someone who's just a personal trainer. He didn't really understand women's bodies. He basically had me on very low macros, but this approach was just me like not caring about what I was eating and just putting on body weight. And after about 10 months of completely cutting out exercise, I was focusing on doing just yoga and very restorative exercise. And then also just fueling my body enough. Many times that women, when they have some sort of amenorrhea, they need to end up gaining a little bit of weight for the body to feel comfortable that they can support a pregnancy and start cycling again. So once I got, basically after 10 months about really, really focusing on that, I was able to get my cycles back and stuff started to normalize. And since then I ended up putting on 25 pounds, which was a lot of weight. Again, like that was like, it was more of a mental battle than there was like a physical battle for me, just because it was doing the opposite of what I've always been told to like exercise as much as possible, eat as little as possible in order to get the body that we want. And ended up just spending that long period of time. And it gave me that freedom with food too. So I could start to go back to macro tracking and utilize that no longer as a diet, because that's what I was doing before, and utilize it as a tool to learn, because I really learned about my body, and I started to be intentional of listening to my body and more intuitive with exercise and stuff like that too. And I was able to lose some of that weight that I had gained to get to more of a healthy place, and a place that I felt more confident in. So that is like the big summary of my story.
There we go.
Yeah.
Totally unmuting. Coach Jules, did you want to speak up or did you have a
Sure.
question?
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
Well, it's an amazing story.
You.
So yes, I just was making some notes. One thing I would like you to explore on, because that's what resonates with me. And I know I work with a lot of women who do say, oh, I'm eating healthy. And you said, yes, I was eating clean. What did you define clean, and what changes you made? Like, how did you make it dirty?
Yeah. So for me, clean was really like eliminating anything with artificial stuff. But the problem, let's like really the truth about it was I was trying to restrict and trying to lose weight by eating clean, but it oftentimes would lead to me to binges. So I would be under eating and trying to like suppress my appetite, eat as little as possible, say no to things like ketchup. And like, it was just such small stuff. I remember just feeling so proud of myself at like a holiday for not eating, some of the foods there, and then coming home and like eating the cabinets, like the entire cabinet. So for me, eating clean was just like, I don't know if you guys remember like the Tosca ran, I can't even remember her name. Years ago, she used to be like the eat clean diet. And it was just very much like, I took a lot away from it. Like I learned a lot more about whole foods and things like that. So I do feel like it created a lot of knowledge, but it was just avoidance of anything that probably had sugar in it. I started to at one point even like go gluten-free because I thought that I would be cutting carbs because of that, and that would lead to weight loss. So for me, it was just really much cutting out things with like sugars in it, anything that had artificial anything in it, lots of ingredients and stuff like that. So
basically that mindset of restriction was justifying your clean eating that was creating that sabotage and also binging and then other emotional stressors by you doing the good thing, but really you were just trying to restrict not to eat or not to
restriction of like eating other foods that I just felt like I had no control. Every time I would have something, because I had such yo-yo dieting tendencies in the past, that every time I would restrict and I would like have a little bit of something, it would just go like, I would have cheat like meals on the weekends, and that would lead to a lot of like, the overeating and things like that. That's self-talking, because I never allowed it. When you tell yourself no to anything, then that's immediately trigger you to want it.
Yeah, that's what the brain wants. Yes,
yeah, exactly.
So that's very interesting explanation for sure. So I don't know if Amanda, you had something. I have a few more, but we can take turns.
Well, I just appreciate so much how you mentioned paying attention, like I heard you say a few times how noticing your menstrual cycle was giving you these, like, I kind of think there's something going on here, like you were using that as a cue. I think even some of women in our group who don't even have a menstrual cycle anymore, I think it's so cool to know that you can lean into your menstrual cycle and how it's going as a really big indicator of your wellness, and trust that that's not in your imagination or something like that. It's a really great vital sign to lean into and help you be like, yeah, even though the doctors might be saying it's okay, something's going on here.
Yeah, for sure. And I do find, since I've been coaching, is that women that have a tendency to do a lot of yo-yo dieting or restriction end up going into menopause earlier. I don't know if you've experienced the same thing where, I think our bodies are just not happy and our hormones aren't happy that it shuts that like off earlier than it needs to. And
I feel like I've had that similar experience, and it would be so, that's why part of why I started this group was to share the hormones information that I was learning, because I began seeing a hormone specialist, because at 35-ish, I ran out of progesterone, which is not supposed to happen until menopause.
Right.
And it was definitely, my doctor and gynecologist were like, oh, this is just how it is. Nothing we could do. Whereas I was like, I don't think so, guys. Like, this is I feel really awful. And there's a reason this is happening.
Yeah. I feel like that's the explanation all the time now. This is just normal. Or it's like, this is what happens. And like, we're given Band-Aids. Like, again, I was told to take birth control. I'm like, that's just going to give me like a withdrawal bleed. That's not going to be truly, my hormones supporting my body at a time that's what needed to happen. So it feels like it's such a common thing where we're kind of just like brushed aside too, and told these things like that.
Yeah. And even at an age when you might not even need birth control, I was told that, well, let's use it for XYZ solution to your bad moods or whatever. And I think luckily, finally by 43, when this started happening, I was on the ball enough to say, I kind of don't think that I'm okay with how birth control really works. I understand it finally now. And I don't think that's going to solve any of my problems.
Right.
As a younger woman, I did not have any of that knowledge. And so hopefully I'll do a better job teaching my daughter about that. And again, that's why I love having this group to say, birth control is a chemical medication. It totally shuts down your hormones. And it's just, you got to be a smart consumer when it comes to chemical hormone-based birth control.
Yeah, 100%,
Yeah.
never going on it again. It's like, no way, thank you.
One last quick question before Jules asks
Yeah.
another, and maybe this was on her mind too. I wondered, was there something that what was in your heart or mind that said, I'm okay with going ahead and eating more now because this is how I think I'm going to get myself better? Because I feel like that's so not we've learned now about reverse dieting and eating more to
Yeah.
move out of a diet has a name now and it's a thing, but so many people are so scared of that and don't see that as the next step ever.
Yeah, and that's kind of the difference of my approach, where I was just like, I'm going to put on the body fat because my main goal is to get my periods back as soon as possible. But for me, it's like I started to just do research around about hormones and things like that. And I did end up finding a group and a woman that wrote a book that was No Period Now What? And she kind of took that approach. And again, there was a lot of people that had gotten their cycles back and they restored their cycles just by eating more. So there was, and I related to a lot of the women in that group. But then, again, like I said, I think I would do things differently now. I would probably focus on reverse dieting and spending that time and doing things a little bit differently, because it was, as much as like gaining the body fat is what my body needed, that was also putting a lot of stress on my body too, of adding extra weight really quickly. So I think for me, it was just, I had to be okay with just letting, I guess, I don't even know. I don't know what the thought was, it was just like, this is something I have to do. I'm a very, like I said, I'm like a perfectionist tendencies, because I won't say I'm a perfectionist, but I have those tendencies. So for me, it was just like, if I have an idea and I stick to something, then I can't give up on it. And it's just something that I was just wanting to continue to do. But I think for me, it was just like, I had to say, what's more important to me? Is it going to be the way I look, or is it going to be, my family and my overall health and all these other things for me? And that was kind of like the thing that changed things. I was, I guess, hopeful that my mindset would change too, because I was just done. I was done with restricting. I was done with feeling tired all the time. I was done with feeling obsessed with the scale, and I was done with feeling obsessed with exercise, because it was just, there was a lot of that going on in my life. So I was just like, I'm done with that. If I can seek balance by gaining a little bit of weight, then it's worth it to me.
Yes. Awesome. Yes. Awesome. Well, yes. And we can also say that you're a high achiever. So you have tendencies of achieving.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and plus your body was talking, or maybe crying to you.
Yeah.
And yes, that was just some of my questions. So thank you, Amanda, for asking, because yes, Kim was using the word intuitively. And that's what I wanted to know, okay, intuitively, but then did you do some research, or how did you come to that conclusion? And it seems like, yes, you found some resources, did some reading, and that intuitively felt more right to you, and you were ready to go with that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the big thing too was, as I mentioned, I did utilize a macro coach, and he was more of a personal trainer and didn't understand my body. And this is just, I guess, important that every woman's body is different. So even though I had talked to I actually got multiple one-time macro consults to be like, maybe that's the problem, is I'm not eating enough, was that there was still something else going on. I did need to fuel up higher. I probably needed more calories than where my maintenance was at to really get my body going again. And that's kind of something else, was just, you have to be intuitive to your body, even if you're in a reverse diet and you're focusing on maintenance. If you're still feeling a lot of that hunger or something else going on, or maybe either you need a little bit more body fat or something else is kind of off. And that's where I was really probably under eating on fats too. And that definitely can throw off hormones. And again, the intuitive side to stuff was really important for me, the exercise and everything else. I was not listening to my body when it said stop. I would usually, what would happen is I wouldn't take rest days until I would be at the gym, and I'd be 10 minutes into my workout and be like, I can't finish today. And then I would go home and take my rest day, which wasn't one.
Yes. So if I may ask maybe some final questions, whatever. But So I guess what you would do differently now is spending more time in reverse and taking that time to add those calories without gaining that extra fat. That's what
Yeah.
you have to do because you know better, you know more, and that's would be your approach, correct?
Yes, it definitely would. You know, if someone is and has amenorrhea for some reason, I would recommend that they may need to put on body fat, but for most women that may have come from like the yo-yo dieting or restrictive, or maybe even lost weight and they're just scared to eat more, that you don't have to like stress about the extra like scale going up or anything during like a reverse diet, that it's going to be worth it, even if you see it go up like a few extra pounds, because of that freedom that you're going to have, the fueling your body what it feels like to actually live your life in a fueled place, rather than living your life in under eating and constantly exhausted. And then like that always triggers out your stress levels. I mean, your ability to cope and manage and do your daily job is, or like, either whether you're my wife, like you know, parent, any of that stuff, it's just impossible to do if you're under eating. So
Mhm.
it is scary. It's a scary leap to eat more when you've been telling yourself your entire life to like, I need to be smaller and I need to eat less. But it's 100% worth it to not only get that like balance and like health and everything else, it's just for your own, you know, freedom from that. Like that we put these chains on ourselves, I think, so often, and it's just so much restriction. And I think everyone that takes that opportunity to reverse diet and get up to maintenance and realize what it's like to live there, they never regret it. It's just scary.
Yes,
Doing
yes.
something different.
For sure, yes, it's been an amazing journey for me as well. And if
Yeah.
for audience, some of you might have not heard reverse maintenance and all of that, or macros. Don't worry. So, but this is not the topic for today.
Yeah.
But Amanda and I will be talking about it through this time. But if I ask like one more question before I give it to Amanda, because I've been in interaction with Kim for some time and following her account, and she's great and delivering great information. And right now, I know Kim is actually in her cutting stage, which means she is in a calorie deficit, doing in a smart macro way, not treating like a diet. So, in knowing her story and then seeing her doing that, I was like, oh my God, like, how do you overcome over that fear? Because to me, like this, what you're saying is it's amazing what you've been through and how you are still going for your aesthetic goals, but at the same time feeling good and paying attention to your body, and then allowing yourself to go into that cut. It's
Mhm.
like, do you experience like those flashbacks, or do you have like fears, or like you learn your body so much and been through so many stages that you're so empowered? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
for example, when I was practicing headstand in yoga and then I twisted my neck, like I would never go upside down anymore, like forever, like forget
Yeah.
it. No matter what, what's gonna happen. But for you, just like going through this, you know what I'm trying to say, I
Yeah.
guess.
No, for sure. I
Like,
mean,
how do
so
you go over that
how do I get
mindset?
over the
How do you
fear?
not get emotional?
Yeah. And so I mean, I lost about 10 pounds after I had gained on some of that weight. So I kind of like experienced that, you know, it's the second time I've gone through this. I spent a lot of time at maintenance after reversing up after that last little cut. But I think for me is I go into it different. I used to go into it with desperation, where it's like, I need to lose weight. Like I need this in order to be happy. Like I genuinely thought that my happiness relied on what the scale number looked like, or number on the scale, or you know, my level of leanness. And whereas now I go into it like, if I don't lose any weight or any fat or anything like that, I'll be okay. And that's okay. So I'm taking a different approach, where it is more of like a detective or scientist, and just utilizing that as like an experiment. And of course, I'm going to be paying attention to like my biofeedback, which I never used to do. And I'm going to pay attention to my cycles. I know exactly like, you know, my length of cycles when I ovulate. And so I still pay attention to all those things. And I know that if I feel any like extra dieting fatigue or like tired or anything like that, that I'm not going to jeopardize my health over some sort of like aesthetic goal. So I've kind of incorporated, like, I don't know how long I'm going to spend in this. I'm kind of see how my body responds, but I will, like, at least after 6 weeks, I would do what I like a diet break. So I would spend like a week at maintenance, kind of giving my body more fuel, things like that, which could potentially help, you know, or like any type of hormonal thing that's happening or anything that could possibly like loss of period or anything like that. I would never want to go back to that. I do find too that, you know, as we age and and like our cortisol levels we're just more sensitive to stress, workouts, all those things that, you know, women as we age need less time in cuts. So I think that's, you know, that's the approach that I'm taking, where it's okay if it takes longer. It's just a matter of, you know, being okay with that and being patient. But again, like going into it, kind of knowing that I'd be happy if I'm where I'm at now, and I will pay attention to my body. I listen to my body. If I set numbers for myself and I am starving, that's my body talking to me and I need to do something about that. So I think my approach is totally different, whereas before I was like, because again, like I'm that person that was like, I need to follow the numbers. I would follow the numbers and I wouldn't pay attention to anything else. So I think that's like the big difference in my approach, and kind of just, I've had to release a lot, or just lean into fear, I guess, in my journey multiple times. So that's kind of why I'm okay with it, going into it now and just being okay and knowing that I trust the process because I've done it so many times. It's just easier for me.
That's a really truly inspirational journey and also transformational. So definitely I can see and feel how much you're equipped and empowered. That's why going through this cutting phase is not, it's not the same just because your mindset changed, just like a common coach, Amber likes to say, it's who you've been becoming through this whole process. And you definitely think differently. You definitely act differently, behave differently. You use different strategies. You look at these things differently because you truly have become this different Kim, who can be in tune with her body, who does not relate her weight to her happiness, which is huge. And this is a truly transformation. Well, thank you for sharing. I think I'm out of questions.
Well, thank you.
I just so appreciate that Coach Jules asked you to be here and that you shared this. It's like the information couldn't be more perfect for everyone in the group to hear. Just because it's so, I think that's why so many women come to this group, is like, nothing seems very straightforward or clear after 35 when it comes to taking care of yourself, much less losing weight, hormone balance. And I would imagine anyone who hears this is going to say, you know what, that is not what I thought she was going to say. Like, that's not how I imagine I'm going to find food freedom and hormone health. And that it, you know, that it's going to be eat more and go through these different phases where sometimes you're eating more, sometimes you're eating at maintenance, sometimes you're in a short phase where you eat less because you're on a diet for a short amount of time. So I just appreciate you adding your voice to that conversation so it can become more just commonplace. Because like I said, I don't think there's one answer for everyone, but what I keep seeing and hearing is working is what you are saying. Like that's what I see works, especially 40-year-old, 50, 60, 70-year-old client, women that I've gotten to meet saying, it doesn't just work to overexercise and be on a diet anymore. In fact, that makes you quit because you feel so terrible. It sabotages your health so dramatically. Instead, what works is what Coach Kim is saying, of learning all new rules, not even rules, but just learning more about your body and different approaches to how you're going to take care of your body, different priorities you're going to have as you do it. So
yeah. And I think if doctors would come on board and follow the phrase that we know and hear, that food is medicine, we can possibly work as a team so that whenever the other forms of intervention are necessary, they can be there, but what lifestyle changes can we approach and practice and stay consistent with and just see what happens? Because truly the basics, the foundation of this pyramid is really the lifestyle, which is the food and the movement, and of course resting in between would be a good piece.
Yeah,
So if the
100%.
foundation is in place, like we see in your case, then hopefully, you know, things are working well. And if that foundation is not in place, right, then what else can be added? But you know, the foundation is there, just like we talk about vitamins, they're supplements. Except that I know people who take 10 vitamins a day and don't do anything in lifestyle.
Yeah,
So it's a supplement, right? So that's why that foundation of the pyramid, yes, it works. And now you've learned so much. And I'm sure you're gonna teach your daughter some good things.
yeah, definitely. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for being here. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I feel grateful. It's been fun.
yeah.
So maybe I can put it in the comments, but Coach Jules mentioned how she's able to follow Coach Kim on social media. So I'd like for others to be able to do that too, just to see all the great information you're sharing. Do you suggest like your Instagram and Facebook maybe is a good way to get more from you and your website?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And she also has a 5-day challenge coming up starting on Monday. So
Okay.
yeah,
I do.
I don't, yeah.
Monday, January 10th. And we
Uh-huh.
will put so that you all have it. I'm going to put it in the comments. Coach Kim's website, a link to her Instagram, and to how to find her on Facebook.
Yeah, and she does have her story in her pictures in the stories. In the
Yeah.
Instagram stories.
I've been a very open book. So I share
Yeah.
a lot because I had a lot of people following my journey and that we're on the same journey. So I think it's helpful for others too.
So yeah, I definitely see the progress and the pictures. So you did a great job. And you look amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the week. We're halfway through, and I will go get that information in the comments so people can reach out to you, connect, and maybe even ask about your challenge starting on Monday.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right. I think I have to end our whole, let me see.